can't fool me. You want the hookup. Access to the secret shelf of stories. The ones that come up in weird literary forums, in dim cafes, or at 2 a.m. when someone says, "Wait, you know about that story?" Yes, the strange little masterpieces that are cult classics. I've got them for you. Some are surreal, some are tragic, some are so absurd they circle all the way back to genius. These are the tales that make you feel like you're in on something, like you've just joined a very quiet, very odd club. And yes, they are abridged, because sometimes all you really need is a synopsis, a little taste to say you've been there, heard that. But just so you know, these are the stories that made Kafka cool, that Borges couldn't stop thinking about, that turn a casual chat into a surreal little rabbit hole no one saw coming. They don't always make sense, but they do make a point. So get comfortable. You're about to become more interesting for listening. I suggest closing your eyes to get immersed in the words. Our first short story is The Library of Babel by Jorge Luis Borges. The story inspired theories of infinite multiverses, information entropy, and even the structure of the internet. The Library of Babel doesn't promise answers. It promises possibility and the madness that comes from searching too long. Let's begin. The universe, which others call the library, is composed of an indefinite, perhaps infinite number of hexagonal galleries. This is not a metaphor. The library is real, an eternal structure of interlocking hexagonal rooms, each with 4 walls of books, a spiral staircase, and a corridor that leads you to yet more hexagons. There are sleeping nooks, restrooms, and bare necessities, but no one remembers where the library ends, or if it ends at all. No one remembers anything else, in fact. The library is the universe. Always has been. Each book in this library is exactly the same in format. 410 pages, 40 lines per page, 80 characters per line. And every character comes from a strict alphabet of 25 symbols, 22 letters, space, period, comma. This means that every book contains a unique combination of these letters and symbols. Every possible combination. Let that sink in. This library contains every autobiography of everyone who ever lived, every lie ever told, every medical cure, every conspiracy, every secret name of God, every sentence you're thinking right now, entire shelves of nonsense, books where a single comma is out of place, books that are just the letter M repeated, and books that explain, perhaps perfectly, how the library came to be. Somewhere among the gibberish, people believe is the truth. Humans live here, born into it, wandering it, searching for meaning. They call themselves librarians, but they're more like pilgrims or mad scholars. Some have faith, some have lost it, some no longer care. Many are obsessed with finding the Vindication, a mythical book that explains the purpose of everything, the library, humanity, the structure of time. But There is no catalog, no way to know what's nearby, no map, no duplication system. You can't tell if the book you hold is one of a kind or just one of trillions of similar ones, but with a single typo. Some librarians start to believe that no one will ever find meaning, that the library is a cruel joke, a divine prank. Others believe in a crimson hexagon, a sacred chamber where all the true books are stored, every correct version, all clarity, all light. But no one has found it. They've only died trying. Over centuries, sects have emerged. The purifiers, they burn nonsense books to reduce chaos, believing that removing errors will leave only truth. The seekers, they roam endlessly, hoping for a book that makes sense. The suicides, overwhelmed by the futility, many throw themselves from the staircases. The mystics, they believe the library is God, and every book a fragment of divine will. But most die in despair because even if the book of truth exists, the chance of ever finding it is statistically zero. There's a strange comfort in this chaos. If every possible book exists, then you exist somewhere in the library, again and again. Then your story, in all its versions, is eternal. Then death isn't the end because another book begins with your rebirth. Then every answer is written, but buried in infinity. There is no beginning and no end, just possibility forever. The Library of Babel isn't really a story. It's more like a thought experiment wearing a trench coat. It doesn't give you characters to root for or a plot to follow. Instead, it gives you a philosophical riddle. It takes something we all want, answers, truth, purpose, and then buries them in a system so big, so infinite, that you could search forever and still never find a single page that makes sense. Borges wrote this in 1941, before the digital age, but it eerily predicts concepts like information overload, search algorithms, the multiverse, AI-generated text, and even the internet itself, a vast web of meaning and nonsense coexisting. We are all just librarians now, scrolling endlessly, looking for something real in the noise. So, if this left you dizzy or a little existential, congrats, you get it. And maybe that means you've already found your book. But sometimes, the chaos doesn't come from outside, from endless books or infinite rooms. Sometimes, it starts right in your bedroom. You wake up one morning and everything is wrong. Your body doesn't work the way it did yesterday. Your job no longer makes sense. The people you love look at you like you're a burden. There's no grand universe to explore, just a small, suffocating apartment, and the slow realization that no one is coming to save you. Franz Kafka knew that feeling. And in the Metamorphosis, he doesn't give you a reason. He just drops you into it. We awaken with Gregor Samsa, whose transformation is not a punchline, but a quiet unraveling. One morning, as the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains, Gregor Samsa awoke from uneasy dreams to find himself transformed in his bed into a monstrous insect. his hard, armor-like back, and when he lifted his head slightly, he could see his brown, domed belly divided into stiff, arched segments. His numerous legs, pitifully thin compared to the rest of his body, waved helplessly before his eyes. What has happened to me? He thought. It wasn't a dream. His room, a proper human room, though a bit too small, lay quietly between its four familiar walls. A collection of textile samples was spread out on the table. Gregor was a traveling salesman, and above it hung a picture he had recently cut out of an illustrated magazine and placed in a pretty gilded frame. Gregor glanced at the alarm clock ticking on the chest of drawers. Good heavens, he thought. It was 6:30, and the hands were quietly moving forward. He had to catch the train at 7. He tried to turn onto his side to get out of bed, but his new body made it difficult. He was used to sleeping on his right side, but in his current state, he couldn't get into that position. No matter how hard he threw himself on his right, he always rolled back to where he was. He thought about his job, the constant traveling, the worry over missed trains, the irregular meals, the superficial relationships. If I didn't have to hold back for my parents' sake, I'd have quit long ago, he thought. Gregor? His mother called from the other side of the door. It's 7:15. Didn't you want to catch the train? Gregor tried to respond, but his voice had changed. It was unmistakably his voice, but mixed in with a painful, uncontrollable squeaking. His father and sister joined in, knocking and calling out. The chief clerk from his office had even come to check on him. Gregor knew he had to get out of bed and explain himself, but his new body made it nearly impossible. He struggled, using his many legs to rock himself back and forth, finally falling out of bed with a thud. Gregor managed to unlock the door with his mouth, turning the key with great difficulty. As the door swung open, his family and the chief clerk saw him for the first time in his transformed state. His mother collapsed into a chair, his father clenched his fists, and the chief clerk stepped back in horror. Gregor tried to speak, to explain, but his words were unintelligible. He knew he had to return to his room. Days passed. Gregor remained confined to his room. His sister, Greta, brought him food, but he found himself repelled by the fresh meals he once enjoyed. Instead, he preferred rotten scraps. He spent his days crawling on the walls and ceiling, finding comfort in the darkness under the sofa. He listened to his family's conversations, feeling a growing sense of guilt and isolation. Over time, his family grew weary of caring for him. One evening, after overhearing a conversation about getting rid of him, Gregor retreated to his room. He lay there, weak and motionless. As dawn broke, he took his final breath. The family discovered Gregor's lifeless body. They felt a sense of relief. That day, they took a tram ride into the countryside. Greta stretched her young body, and her parents realized it was time to find her a suitable husband. Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis, first published in 1915, remains one of the most iconic works of 20th century literature. Surreal, tragic, and darkly humorous. At first glance, the story seems bizarre. A man wakes up as a giant insect. But Kafka's real focus isn't on the transformation itself, it's on what happens afterward. Gregor Samsa, once a dutiful son and hard-working salesman, becomes a burden, hidden from view, spoken of in whispers, and ultimately forgotten. The tale reflects Kafka's own feelings of estrangement from his family, his job, and even his body. The insect is never fully described, which makes the horror more psychological than physical. Gregor's slow erasure from his family's life becomes a haunting metaphor for what happens when someone can no longer serve a purpose in a world built on productivity and appearances. Kafka never offers an explanation for the transformation, and that's intentional. Like much of his work, the metamorphosis resists clear meaning. Instead, it creates a mood, one of discomfort, quiet grief, and the surreal tragedy of being human. Where Kafka gives us a surreal bodily trap, Charlotte Perkins Gilman offers a psychological one. The yellow wallpaper charts a woman's quiet unraveling in a room meant to cure her. The story begins. It's not every day that regular people like John and I get to stay in a house like this for the summer. It's an old mansion, probably passed down for generations. I'd love to call it haunted and romantic, but that's probably wishful thinking. Still, there's something strange about it. John laughs when I say that, but honestly, I've come to expect that. He's practical, always looking for facts and figures, not feelings. He's a physician, and maybe that's part of the reason I'm not getting better. You see, he doesn't really believe I'm sick. John picked a big room upstairs for us. It used to be a nursery, or maybe a playroom. The windows stretch across the walls, so the room is full of light and air. It really is beautiful, except for the wallpaper. It's such a weird pattern, hard to follow and somehow frustrating to look at. The shapes twist and curl, then suddenly break off into wild angles like they've gone mad. The color is awful, a faded, dirty yellow. It reminds me of something rotten, and it seems to be everywhere. John says if I don't get better soon, he'll send me to see Dr. Weir Mitchell in the fall. I really hope that doesn't happen. I had a friend who went to him, and she is worse now than she ever was. John says I just need rest and self-control, that I shouldn't let my imagination get the better of me. So I try hard to seem normal when he's around. But it's exhausting. Honestly, I think if I had more freedom, more people to talk to, I'd feel better. But John says thinking about my illness is the worst thing I can do. So I'm trying not to think about it. Let's talk about the house instead. That's easier. I spend a lot of time lying on the bed. It's built into the floor, can't be moved. And watching the wallpaper. It's like a game, tracing the pattern, trying to make sense of it. I start at the bottom corner where it hasn't been torn yet, and I try to follow the lines. But there's no logic to it, no symmetry, it's just chaos. Big, bloated shapes twisting and turning like they're drunk. Some parts seem to connect diagonally, others run in waves like seaweed caught in a current. There's one wall where it's almost whole, and when the light hits it just right, I think I see something forming in the middle, like all the patterns are rushing toward a single point. There's something else. There's something unsettling. The wallpaper has a smell. I noticed it when we first got here. At first it wasn't so bad, with the windows open and the sunlight pouring in. But now, we've had a week of rain, and no matter how much we air out the room, the smell stays. It's everywhere, and I swear it watches me. There's a shape moving behind the pattern. A woman. She's always creeping, crawling, trying to get out. John's gone all day. No one's watching me now. I figured something out. The woman behind the wallpaper, she moves it. She shakes it. Sometimes, I think there are many women. Sometimes, just one. In the bright parts of the room, she's still. But in the shadows, she grips the bars and pulls. She's trying to escape. I started peeling the paper. It clings like it's alive, but I keep pulling. I've ripped off a strip as long as my arm. It fights back, but I think I'm winning. John came home. I locked the door, threw the key out the window. It's no use, I said gently. You can't open it. I got out at last, I whispered. In spite of you, I tore down the paper. You can't put me back. He fainted, and every time I circle the room, I have to creep over him. When the yellow wallpaper came out in 1892, it wasn't just a creepy story. It was a wake-up call. Charlotte Perkins Gilman wrote it after being prescribed the rest cure, a real treatment that told women to stop thinking, stop writing, and basically just lie down and be quiet. For Gilman, it nearly caused a complete breakdown, so she fought back the only way she knew how. With words. The story's peeling wallpaper becomes a symbol of the invisible cages women were trapped in, especially in marriage and medicine. As the narrator slowly unravels, we're not just witnessing madness, but a kind of forced transformation, shaped by a system that refuses to listen to women. Gilman wasn't just critiquing a bad medical practice. She was challenging a whole culture that silenced and dismissed female voices. And more than a century later, her voice still echoes. So, how was that? Weird enough for you? A little dreamy, a little haunting. You came looking for the secret shelf, and now you've seen some of what's on it. The stories that don't show up in high school curriculums. The ones that feel like urban legends for literature nerds. You've wandered through the infinite halls of a cosmic library, met the bug boy, watched a woman peel her sanity off the walls. And here's the thing, you get it now. You feel what makes these stories different. Why they've lasted. Why people trade them like artifacts, little portals into something you can't quite explain. You don't need a full analysis. You just needed the vibe. And you've got that now. So next time someone drops a, wait, you've read that? You can smile and say, oh yeah, I've been there. And if you ever want another taste, you know where to find me.